A lot of you guys talk about procrastination, and I'm suffering some. I wish I would have start this over again. I too am suffering from some procrastination, and so I've got some tools today to help you with that. But why this even matters, and here's the big idea, because I don't feel like I talk about this enough. But when we talk about a happy second half, it's a real thing. Because some of you don't know this, but like if you are struggling through midlife and it feels terrible, I mean, they call it a crisis for a reason. It feels like a crisis, it feels terrible. Okay, great. Yeah, it does. But it's not a crisis. There's a very specific purpose for your work in midlife. And it's basically inviting you to become something else, something more honest, something more authentic, something more outwardly focused, something ironically more inwardly focused as well. So we talk a lot about first and second half of life around here. And I'm going to give you some tools for second half today because it's not easy. And we really do have a choice at midlife. You know, the first half of our life is really often spent working necessarily on our careers, our families, our identities, who we are in the world. It's very external. The second half of life is very internal, expanding your own consciousness, figuring out what your legacy is and how you want to serve the world. Well, it's a pretty big shift, and some people don't make it. I'll be honest with you, they try to back right back up into the first half of their lives because in some ways it was easier. At least we knew the territory there as the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. So I want to give you a tool today. And honestly, when I do these Monday morning mindsets, the truth is most of the time I'm talking to myself. I'm even talking to you guys. Well, except I am here live on YouTube. So a resource that I want to give you today, I want to introduce you to one of my favorite authors. And if you aren't reading this guy, you should be. Meet Steven Pressfield. This right here is actually the second one. There are 3 of these in this little set. And the first one is called The War of Art. And I don't have it because I probably gave it to somebody. But I will tell you, I've read that book. I've read that book 20 times. And I'm going to kind of break it down for you today because I really want to help you with this idea of procrastination. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what my purpose is, etc. Because a lot of people face that when they're tackling the second half of their life. It's really normal. So, and also I'm talking to myself today because I have projects in my life that I just keep quitting on. How do you quit quitting on things that you say are important to you? You know, the procrastination, oh, I'm just a procrastinator. Stop saying that. There's reasons that you quit on things that are important to you. And I'm going to help you with that today. But also, this is going to be a bit of a butt spank. Because the truth is, nobody's coming. Nobody's coming to save us. And that should be perfectly evident to all of us right now. That if you want to get something done, it's up to you to do it. And maybe that sounds very simplistic and naive, but it is the way it is. So when we talk about the second half of life, yes, it is. The second half of life is about meaning. It's about purpose. It's about service. It's about community. It's about belonging. It's about love and legacy. And how do you do that well? Especially if you're in midlife and it feels like garbage. Well, okay, here we go. So this first book called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. I'm going to give you some highlights from it because his main thesis is this, and it's super helpful and interesting. He's introducing this concept of resistance. How many of you guys have felt like resistance and you think that something's wrong with you because what you're trying to do is hard? Well, Steven Pressfield would say, hold on a second. Anytime you are doing anything, that you are starting a business, you are attempting to write a book or a symphony or a ballet, or you are creating something interesting, anything in the creative arts, but also anything in business. Also, a lot of you are, maybe you're attempting to expand your consciousness in the second half of your life by meditating every day, and it is so hard, and you think something's wrong with you. The thing is, nothing's wrong with you. What you're encountering is resistance, and it is absolutely part of the deal. And so what Steve Pressfield is writing about is like how to overcome resistance. And that is what these 3 books, these 3 tiny little books are about. So here are some of its resistance greatest hits. Let me read this to you. The pursuit of any calling in writing, painting, music, film, dance, or any creative art, any diet or health regimen, education of any kind, any course or program designed to overcome an unwholesome habit or addiction, any political, moral, or ethical courage, including the decision to change for the better some unworthy pattern or thought of conduct in ourselves. The undertaking of any enterprise or endeavor whose aim is to help others. Okay, well, if you're doing any of that, expect resistance. And here's a couple things you should know about resistance. And here's the big thing. In other words, any act that rejects immediate gratification in favor of long-term growth, health, or integrity. Well, you might as well just describe your whole second act. That is what the second half of life is about, is delaying gratification, looking at the big picture, answering the big questions, doing something with your life that leaves a mark, if that's what you want to do, okay? So here's a couple things to know. The resistance that you're feeling to doing this work, you're wanting to put it off and procrastinate and make excuses about why you can't do it, or you keep quitting on something that you care about, yeah, that's just resistance, and you have to stop succumbing to it. All right, so he says resistance is a repelling force. It's negative. Its aim is to shove us away, distract us, prevent us from doing our work. Do the work. All right. He also says this, though it feels malevolent, resistance in fact operates with the indifference of rain and transits the heavens by the same laws of the stars. When we marshal our forces to combat resistance, we must remember this. This entire book is about marshaling the forces to combat resistance. Okay, and so we talk about this around here all the time, because what is it you want to do with the second half of your life? Chances are you probably don't want to do the exact same things. You can't even do the same things with the second half of your life that you did with the first. Your kids are growing up, your career is changing, maybe you got divorced. Okay, you have to do something different. And then some of you come to me because you're super stuck and you get way out in the weeds and you have no idea what you're supposed to be doing. But the truth is, I believe that you do know what you want to do. You're just succumbing to the resistance because it's hard. Requires us to delay gratification. And then resistance is clever. That's what this book is all about. Pressfield goes on to tell us that, like, the problem is that we get very, very creative in accepting resistance and making big excuses about why we can't do our real thing. He calls it shadow. Like, this is, we pick up ideas and behaviors and careers and projects that aren't the thing, but they look like the thing. They're adjacent to the thing, but they don't satisfy because they're not the thing. So what's your thing? What is it that you know that you're being called to do? And if you don't have any idea, we help with that, okay? But some of you do have a pretty good idea about what your thing is for your second half, but you haven't bothered or even considered that you might need to build different habits in order to see it happen. That's what these books are about. Again, I'm going to drop a link to these books below because they're so helpful in reminding us that, all right, if you want to grow tomatoes, you're going to have to till up that soil, break up all the hard soil, get the trash out of there, get the rocks out of there. This is your mind. Okay, so the work that we're doing is delaying gratification and reassessing what's going on in between our ears. Okay, that's like a garden. So what is it you want to grow? Is it tomatoes? Great. You're going to have to clean up that garden and you're going to have to water it and amend the soil. And then guess what? You're going to have to weed it every single day. That's the work that Steven Pressfield is commending. Like, whatever you have to do in between your ears, do it. But then also remember, the habits that we get to build are about sitting down. Like, he's talking to writers mostly because he is one. And he has all these different features of a professional. He calls it, when we're succumbing to the resistance to doing our thing, he calls us amateurs. Are you living and working like an amateur? Do you have amateur habits? Are you prone to quitting when it gets hard? And listen, guys, I'm not judging because I'm talking to myself here. Are you prone to quitting when it gets hard? Are you making excuses about the things that why you can't have what you say you want or why you can't do the work you say you want to do. That's all resistance. Okay, great. It's normal. All of us face it. What are you going to do about it? All right. So habits. Pressfield says it's habits. And so here in developing the qualities of a professional, like so many of us have big things we want to do, but we want to do it within our comfort zone. And guess what? Your big thing doesn't live in your comfort zone. It lives outside of it, right? And it is going to challenge you and it is going to cause you to come up higher. I always tell my clients, like the goal is not the goal, okay? The goal is the person you become in pursuit of the goal. And there's resistance to that becoming. So what are some of the qualities of a professional? Like if the amateur is the one that succumbs to resistance, as Steven Pressfield says, okay, well, how do I not succumb? How do I become something else? Great. Well, you become a professional, and here's some of the characteristics. And he laid these out in the War of Art. And please pick that one up first. This one is number 3. This one is number 2. All right. A professional shows up every day. A professional stays on the job all day. The professional is committed over the long haul. Oh man, how many of us? The second something takes too long, we're such an instant gratification society that we drop off and go do something else. I mean, we are set up to be distracted. So becoming a professional and accepting that there's resistance and pushing through it anyway is almost the opposite of what we're taught in our culture or how our culture behaves. The professional is patient. The professional seeks order. The professional demystifies. He acts in the face of fear, accepts no excuses. He plays it as it lays. All of this. These are habits. So when I encounter somebody that is really stuck, most of the time it's not that they don't know what they want to do with the second half of their life. They have at least some idea, but all of it is outside their comfort zone, so they're procrastinating or they're avoiding. And that makes perfect sense. But what Steven Pressfield is saying is like, how bad do you want that thing out there? How bad do you want to write the book? How bad do you want to write the symphony or start the business or start the nonprofit? All of that stuff is possible, but it lives outside your comfort zone and you will face the resistance. Okay, there's nothing wrong with you. That's normal. What are you going to do about it? All right, so this is what I'm commending today is like, stop thinking that something is wrong with you because you procrastinate all the time. Yes, and we've been talking about this for a couple weeks. There's other reasons, like procrastination can be a trauma response. Okay, great. So what, now what? What is it that's important to you? What is it that you want to create with your life? And I know that it's hard to think forward when there's a lot of uncertainty, when it feels like the world is unstable, which it does right now. And what are you going to do? Some of you are dying of boredom inside your comfort zone because you've tried to do stuff before and then you've quit. Okay, guess what? Me too. But you know how you get back on the wagon? You just get back on. All right. And if something is important enough to you, there's a set of habits that will be very, very valuable to you. And there's tons of habit theory out there in the world. Atomic Habits is great. Pressfield's work is great. There's a billion things that you could read to help develop your habits, but also be aware, doing more research and reading can be a form of resistance. That's why I like these books, because they're small. All right. But I read them every year. They remind me of how many times I've quit on things that are important to me. And I want us to quit quitting. Because actually, there is something that you were born to do, like your God's poem. There's something that, or many somethings perhaps, and they can be big heroic things or they can be tiny little things. They can be things in your community. Again, it can be expanding your own consciousness in the second half of your life via meditation and prayer. That's a really good idea, but you're going to hit resistance. Okay? Guess what? Welcome to the human race. So what do you want to do about that? So my suggestion is to pick up the War of Art first. Read that and really get a handle on like, oh my gosh, look at me, I'm normal because this is hard. Yeah, it's hard because it matters. It's hard because it's meaningful. Stop quitting on things that are hard because you think, oh, this, I must be off track because this is hard. No. You're on track because it's hard. I think he says somewhere in the War of Art that the more important a task is to your soul's evolution, the more resistance you're going to face. So if you're facing a lot of resistance, great. Maybe get excited about that because maybe you're really on the right track. I think also it bears mentioning that Steve Pressfield was a writer for a very long time before his books hit. And one of his books became a movie, The Legend of Bagger Vance. That's the patience. So what if it takes the rest of your life? If it's burning inside of you, guess what? You get to do it. Don't regret not doing it because it was hard. All right? I hope that helps you. Go get them. Have a great week.